Some roads don't lead anywhere. They just wait for you to follow. Tonight's story is true, or at least, someone swears it is. But once you hear it, you'll never drive alone the same way again. You're watching Creepy Souls. Subscribe before something else finds you first. I've been an over-the-road trucker for 23 years now. Seen just about everything a man can see out there. Jackknifed semis, deer exploding through windshields, weirdos in truck stop parking lots trying to sell you bootleg meat out the back of a minivan. But what happened to me last fall near Boone, North Carolina? That's different. That night still follows me, still messes with me. It started off like any other haul. I was running a late-night route through western North Carolina, headed east toward Greensboro with a trailer full of copper wiring. Not the most thrilling job, but it paid decent. I'd picked it up in Johnson City earlier that afternoon, stopped for a quick dinner at a Waffle House near Elizabethton, then hit the road again just as the sun dropped behind the Blue Ridge. By the time I passed into the foggy stretch near Boone, it was pushing 11:40 p.m. The road dipped and twisted like it always does in those hills, one of those two-lane state routes with zero cell signal and barely a shoulder. Fog was hanging thick and low like someone had poured milk through the trees, the kind of stuff that eats your high beams whole. I had my music going low, some old Allman Brothers to keep me focused, and both hands locked on the wheel. That stretch of road was familiar to me, but it's not one you relax on. One slip, and you're in a ditch. Or worse, tumbling down a wooded ravine. That's when I saw the headlights in my mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another driver behind me, probably trying to make time like I was, but these lights, they were too close. Way too close. I tapped my brakes lightly. Not enough to slow down much, just a flash to send the message. Back off. Nothing. The lights stayed glued to me, maybe 20 feet behind, just far enough to not clip my trailer, but close enough that their high beams lit up my entire cab. My mirrors were useless. I tried slowing a bit more, letting my foot off the gas to drop from 55 to 40. They slowed too. I nudged my CB. Got a tailgater on 421 eastbound just west of Boone, I said, not really expecting a response. That stretch is dead quiet. Nothing came through except static. A few minutes went by like that, me driving blind from the glare, every turn in the road a gamble, this car or truck maybe, sticking to me like glue. That's when I realized I hadn't seen any road signs in a while. No mile markers, no gas station lights, nothing but fog, trees, and that damn glow in my mirrors. There's a turnout about 8 miles outside of Boone. Old gravel lot with an abandoned way station shack. I'd used it before when I needed to check a flat or grab some quick sleep without DOT breathing down my neck. So that's what I aimed for. I hit my right blinker, slowed down to almost 15. The lights behind me didn't budge. I pulled off the road, easing into the turnout. Crunch of gravel under the tires. My heart was thudding like I'd just sprinted uphill. I waited, hands on the wheel, watching those headlights creep closer in the mirror. But when they reached the turnout, they were gone. I blinked, shifted in my seat, looked again. Nothing. No vehicle passed me. No brake lights disappearing into the fog. No engine rumble. Just black. I even leaned out my window and looked back. The road was empty. I should have felt relief, I guess. But I didn't. Something about the air felt wrong. Heavy. Like it had weight to it. There were no sounds. Not even bugs or frogs. Just the low hiss of my idling engine. That's when I heard the crunch. It came from behind the cab down near the passenger side steps. Gravel shifting just once. I froze. I hadn't opened my door. No one should have been out there. I killed the engine slowly, and the silence that followed felt wrong. Like something was holding its breath. Another crunch. Closer this time. I grabbed the mag light I keep behind the seat, cracked my door open just enough to shine it out into the dark. Nothing. Just fog and weeds. But then I noticed it. Just a detail. Something tiny. The gravel looked disturbed. A faint trail of shifted stones like someone had walked a straight line from the road right up to my truck. I slammed the door and locked it. Heart pounding now, I scanned all my mirrors. Still no vehicle, no movement, just the eerie glow of my own running lights. Then out of nowhere my trailer rocked, like someone had climbed onto it or slammed the back doors. I jumped so hard I hit my head on the roof. Another slam. Then nothing. I didn't move. I just sat there with the flashlight in my lap and both doors locked, trying to breathe, waiting, listening. 5 minutes went by, maybe more. I don't know. I was too scared to even check the time. Eventually, I fired the engine back up and eased out of the turnout. I didn't floor it. I just wanted to get moving, to be away from there, whatever the hell that was, and for a while, nothing happened. The road stretched ahead, quiet and empty. Then I glanced in the mirror, and my stomach dropped. There was someone standing in the middle of the road where I'd just been parked. I couldn't make out their face. The fog blurred everything, but I could see the silhouette, tall, thin, unmoving, just standing there like they were waiting for something or someone. I kept driving. Didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't even blink. About 30 minutes later, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station on the edge of Deep Gap. Bright fluorescent lights, a couple pickups at the pumps, and a kid behind the counter who looked maybe 19. I was still shaken, but trying to act normal. Grabbed a coffee, used the bathroom, tried to calm down. Told myself it was probably just some drifter or hitchhiker. Maybe a prank. Maybe even my brain playing tricks on me after too many hours on the road. I paid for my stuff, made small talk with the cashier, and was almost out the door when he said something that stopped me cold. "You see that guy follow you in?" I turned. "What guy?" He motioned toward the lot. "Looked like he came off the highway, walked in behind your truck, then just turned around and walked off down the ditch. I figured he was with you." I ran outside. Did a full walk around of my rig. Nothing. But the weird part? There were fresh footprints in the dew-covered grass, coming from the ditch, leading right up to my passenger door. I should have called it there. Found a motel. Slept with the lights on. Hell, I should have reported it or something. But I didn't. I told myself I was just jumpy. Told myself I'd finish the haul and laugh about it the next day. That was my mistake. Because about an hour later, somewhere outside Wilkesboro, cruising through another fog-choked stretch of empty road, I saw them again. Headlights, in my mirror, same distance, same high beams. I braked. They braked. I sped up. They stayed with me. But this time, when I flicked my radio on to call for help to try again, the signal wasn't static, it was a voice, my own voice, repeating back to me exactly what I'd just said, word for word. Same tone, same rhythm, like an echo or a recording. And then, the line went dead. I nearly slammed on the brakes right then and there. My own voice, my voice, had just come through the CB like it had been fed through a delay loop. Only there was no static, no background noise, just me speaking back to myself in perfect sync. You ever have that moment where your skin goes ice cold, like every pore in your body suddenly tightens? That's what hit me. My whole chest felt hollow, like I'd stepped off a cliff I didn't know was there. I yanked the cord out of the CB. No point in fiddling with it. I wasn't trying to figure it out anymore. I was trying to survive whatever the hell was happening. Dream. Headlights were still there, glued to my back bumper like before. Too bright, too close. I was southbound now, just outside a tiny town called Rhonda. If you blinked driving through, you'd miss it. There's a bridge over a creek and not much else. I figured if I could make it through there and hit the next truck stop near Yadkinville, I'd find people, lights, maybe even a cop, anything but this. But the road kept going. Dark, silent, fog rolling even thicker now, pooling along the asphalt like it was alive. And then I saw something in my mirror that made me want to pull the wheel hard right and just crash this thing into a ditch. There was someone sitting in my passenger seat. At first, it didn't register. I'd checked that seat back at the gas station. Nothing was there. I hadn't stopped since. But now, in the rearview mirror, just the faintest outline. I could see him, a figure, slumped, like his head was tilted down, shoulders narrow, face hidden by shadow, pale hands resting on his knees. No movement, just sitting there. I didn't turn my head right away. I couldn't. Something in me refused. Instead, I reached over. Without looking, fingers shaking, and swung the beam of my flashlight into the seat beside me, empty. But when I looked back in the mirror, he was still there. Only now. He was facing me, his head tilted up. His face was mine. Not just similar. Mine. Same stubble, same crow's feet around the eyes, same mole just below the left cheek. But the eyes, they were hollow, black like two burned-out holes. I jerked. The wheel. The truck veered off the road, tires skidding across gravel and mud. I yanked it back, overcorrected, clipped a guardrail, and finally managed to bring it to a stop on a narrow patch of shoulder. I was breathing so hard I could hear, blood pounding in my ears. My hands were locked around the wheel, white-knuckled. My whole body was tight, like if I moved, something would reach out and take me. When I finally looked to my right, truly looked, the seat was empty, just my jacket draped over the back. But, in the mirror, he was still there, still smiling. I jumped out of the cab and nearly fell over. The cold hit me like a slap. The kind of deep, wet cold that soaks through denim and into your bones. I backed away from the truck, stepping into the tall grass at the edge of the road, shining my light over the cab, under it, behind it. I even opened the passenger door and shone the beam straight across the seat. Nothing. No footprints. No fogged window. No sign of anyone. Just the rumble of my still-running engine and the smell of diesel and cold pine. I didn't get back in right away. I stood there for a long time, maybe 15 minutes, trying to calm myself, telling myself it was stress, lack of sleep, that I'd nodded off for a second and dreamt something into the mirror. But I knew better. Eventually I climbed back, kept the dome light on, and crept down the road at 35, hazard lights flashing. I just needed to get somewhere. A little after 3:30 a.m., I pulled into a Love's Travel stop outside Yadkinville. Bright, open, warm. The guy behind the counter gave me a nod and asked if I was all right. I must have looked like hell. I said I just needed coffee and a minute to breathe. He pointed me toward the back booth and didn't ask more. I sat there for 20 minutes, sipping bitter coffee and watching my truck through the window. Nothing happened. No movement. No headlights, no ghost in the seat. Finally, I got up to leave, and that's when I saw it, drawn in the fog on the inside of the passenger window. You let me in. I didn't finish the haul that night. Called dispatch and told them I was taking a personal emergency day. They didn't ask questions. I checked into a roadside motel and left all the lights on. Barely slept. Next morning, I cleaned out the truck, top to bottom, scrubbed that window until it gleamed, took it through a wash bay, told myself it was over. But here's the thing. I still drive that same route sometimes, and sometimes in the mirror, I'll see a flash of something behind me, headlights far off, too bright. Sometimes I'll check the passenger seat and feel like it's warmer than it should be. And once, just once, I glanced into that mirror too long and saw me staring back. Not my reflection. Not really. His face was too calm, too still. And his eyes? Still black? Even now, I leave the dome light on when I drive at night. Just in case. Because whatever climbed into my truck that night near Boone, I don't think it ever got out. I've been driving night routes through the mountains of West Virginia for almost 8 years now. Gravel hauls, small-town drop-offs, supply runs for remote sites, whatever pays. That night was supposed to be uneventful, a straight shot, from Beckley to Hinton, all two-lane blacktop winding through old mining towns and thick forest. I'd done it dozens of times. It was late October, right around when the trees up there are lit up like fire, gold, rust, deep orange. Beautiful. during the day, but at night they just turn black, especially once you're deep into the mountains and the road narrows to the point you feel like you're the only person alive for miles. It was a Tuesday, little past 10:30 p.m. The air was cold enough I could see my breath, and fog had started to roll in low along the ground. I had my high beams on, a thermos of black coffee in the cup holder, and an old George Strait CD playing low. Just me and the road. I was on Route 16, somewhere south of Leyland, when I first saw it. A car on the shoulder. Hazard lights blinking, red-orange flashes bouncing off the trees and cutting through the fog like a heartbeat. There was a woman standing, outside the car, waving her arms like she needed help. Not panicked, but not casual either. Something in between. Like she'd already been out there too long. Naturally, I slowed down. Now I've always been cautious. It's something you learn quick driving nights. You don't pull over for just anything. But this felt different. Her body language wasn't aggressive, no one else around. And she didn't come running at the truck or anything. Just stood there near the front bumper, arms moving in that same wide arc like, please, please stop. I eased my truck to the shoulder maybe 50 yards ahead of her and flipped on my flashers. Put it in park. Reached for my flashlight from the glove box. But when I looked up again, the road was empty. No car. No woman. Just trees. Fog. Darkness. I blinked hard and leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the windshield like maybe I'd somehow lost sight of her. I scanned my mirrors. Nothing. Just the empty road stretching off behind me. It wasn't possible. I opened the door and stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The cold hit me fast, sharp and wet, like it had rained earlier and the chill had settled in. I clicked on my flashlight and started walking back toward where the hazard lights had been. There wasn't even a tire mark on the side of the road. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded too loud. No response. I stood there for maybe a full minute listening. Nothing but the soft whisper of wind through pine. It didn't make sense. I shook it off and got back in the truck, convincing myself maybe I'd just misjudged. Seen something that wasn't there. Maybe the red blink had come from an old sign reflector. Maybe the fog had played tricks on me. That happens out there more than people admit. But 20 minutes later, it happened again. Same kind of road, same thick woods on both sides. Only this time it was worse. Another car. Farther up ahead, hazard lights flashing. And the same woman. Same exact posture. Same build. Dark hair. Waving her arms in that slow arc. I slowed again without even thinking, that gut-deep human instinct to help someone in need. But as I got closer, my stomach turned. It was like déjà vu, and not in the way where something just feels familiar. This was exact, like a film being replayed. I hit the brakes hard. I stopped, maybe 15 feet away from her, and this time with my high beams squarely on her. And I swear to God, she wasn't blinking. Not just her eyes, the hazards. Her face. Nothing moved. She was frozen mid-motion, hands in the air, mouth slightly open, and then, like a frame cutting, it all vanished. Lights gone. Woman gone. I slammed the truck in reverse, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever the hell just happened, but there was nothing behind me. Just fog. Trees. And that same oppressive silence. I sat there in the middle of the road for a long time, heart racing. I didn't drink, didn't use anything. I knew what I saw. I drove the rest of the way into Hinton without stopping. Didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, not in a jump scare kind of way, but in a blank, slow, watching kind of way. The next morning, I stopped at the diner on 4th Street, just off the main drag. Regular spot. Coffee, eggs, try to feel normal. I was telling myself it was stress, maybe a trick of light and exhaustion. But the waitress, Carla, noticed something was off. She's been working there longer than I've been hauling. "You look like you saw a ghost," she joked, half smiling as she poured my coffee. I told her what happened. Not everything, just the basics. Strange car, blinking hazards, woman vanishing. She didn't laugh, didn't even blink. Instead, she set the pot down and said, "You were on Route 16, weren't you?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. How'd you know?" She glanced around the mostly empty diner and leaned in close. "You're not the first. Ask around town. There's been stories for years. Always the same, on a woman by the side of the road. Sometimes she's standing still. Sometimes she's waving. Always right before the fog sets in." I stared at her. "No one ever stops anymore," she continued. "Not after what happened to that boy from Greenbrier. 19 years old. Saw her, pulled over. Never made it to where he was going." "What happened to him?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "They found his truck 6 miles off the highway. Engine running. Driver's side door wide open. No sign of him. Not then, not since." I tried to push it out of my head. I did. But the following week, it happened again. I was coming back the opposite direction, up through that same stretch. It was just past 11 p.m. this time. Light drizzle on the windshield, fog rolling in heavy. And there she was. Only this time she was standing in the middle of the road. I hit the brakes so hard my coffee thermos flew off the dash and splashed all over my leg. Tires screeched. The truck fishtailed a little and came to a stop sideways across the center line. I was less than 10 feet from her. My headlights lit her up from the waist down. Bare feet, pale legs, wet jeans stuck to her skin. But above that, the fog was too thick to see anything else. And then, she walked forward. Slow, mechanical steps. One after another. I froze. Didn't move. Couldn't. She stopped right at the edge of my driver's side window, and I swear I felt the cold seep in through the glass. Then she leaned down. I couldn't see her eyes, just the outline of her head and a glint of wet hair plastered to her temple. And then she knocked. 3 slow, dull thuds on the glass. I felt my bladder twitch. My hands went numb. Every instinct I had was screaming not to look, not to turn my head. Like if I saw her face, something would break in me. And then she whispered something. I couldn't hear it through the window, but I could feel it. Not the words, the intent. It was hate. Cold, ancient, personal hate. I slammed the truck in gear and tore off so fast I nearly hit a tree on the curve. Didn't stop again that night, didn't tell Carla, didn't tell anyone. That should have been the end of it. But 2 nights ago, almost a full month later, I got a call from my cousin Mark. He drives for a timber company out of Anstead. Different routes, different hours. We only talk once in a while, but he sounded rattled, shaky even. He didn't waste time. "Dude," he said, "you ever see a woman standing on Route 16? My blood ran cold. "Yeah," I said, barely above a whisper. "Why?" He went quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I saw her too, but she wasn't waving. She was walking. Right down, the middle of the lane, toward me." I stopped. I thought maybe she needed help or was in trouble, but she kept walking right up to my truck, knocked on my window 3 times. My mouth went dry. "And then what?" I asked. "She said my name," he whispered. Not shouted, not screamed. She said my name, and I swear to God I have no idea how she knew it. I've never seen her before in my life. He paused. "She told me, you saw her too." I didn't sleep the night Mark called. I just sat in the living room with all the lights on, a blanket around my shoulders like a kid who just watched his first horror movie. Only this wasn't a movie. This was real. Mark was the only other person I'd told, and even then, just the basics. I hadn't mentioned the knock. I hadn't said anything about the voice. But somehow he knew. She'd told him. It felt like a string had been pulled between us and whatever this thing was. Like once you saw her, you were tied in. Mark tried to play it off the next day, saying maybe it was just a dream. Maybe he'd dozed off at the wheel for a second, but I could hear it in his voice. He didn't believe his own lie, neither did I. The next few weeks I stayed off Route 16. I rerouted every job I could. Took longer detours. Lost some hours, sure, but I didn't care. I didn't even want to be near that part of the state. But it didn't matter. That stretch of highway had already wormed its way into my thoughts. I'd dream about it, about the woman standing there, still, silent, eyes locked on mine like she was waiting for something I hadn't done yet. Sometimes I'd hear the knock, in my sleep. 3 slow taps. Other times I'd wake up thinking I heard my name whispered from the hallway, only to find my place dark and empty. No intruders, no voices, just silence and fog. It started showing up outside my house. I live in a hollow north of Beckley. Fog's not uncommon, but this was different. Thicker, heavier, like it settled just for me. And always around 10:30 p.m. Everything came to a head last Friday. I got a last-minute call from dispatch. Emergency lumber load headed to a construction site near Thurmond. It was after hours, but double pay if I could get it there before midnight. I almost said no. I should have said no. But bills were stacking, and I'd been off my usual routes too long. I figured if I left immediately and cut across the back ridge road, I could avoid Route 16 altogether. That plan held in Bryan for about an hour. Then came the detour sign. Fresh construction. I cursed out loud, slapped the steering wheel, and pulled over to check my GPS. Only one other route showed up that didn't add 2 extra hours. Route 16, like a noose tightening around my neck. I sat there for a long minute, engine idling, jaw clenched. The clock was ticking and I needed the money. Bad. So I made the call. Told myself it'd be fine. One last haul. Just keep the radio on, keep moving, and don't stop for anything. The second I turned onto Route 16, I knew I'd messed up. The fog was already waiting. Low, thick, crawling across the road like a living thing. My headlights barely cut through it. Trees pressed in tighter than I remembered, their trunks black and slick with moisture. I gripped the wheel and leaned forward, every muscle in my back tense. Halfway in, my radio died. Just cut out. Not static. Dead. No power. I tapped the screen. Nothing. Then the headlights flickered. Just once. Barely noticeable. But enough. I passed the exact spot I'd first seen her, the turnout near Leyland, and my eyes locked onto the shoulder automatically, empty. Then, not empty. She was standing there. No car, no hazards, just her. And this time, she turned to look at me, slowly. Like it hurt. I didn't stop. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. I just kept rolling forward, trying to pretend she wasn't real. But the second I passed her, I felt something in the truck shift. Like weight had been added. Like someone had stepped up onto the back bumper. I checked my mirrors. Fog, nothing else. 10 minutes later, I heard the knock. Thud. 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 Driver's side window. I refused to turn. My eyes stayed glued to the road, knuckles white on the wheel. Then I heard it again, but softer this time, like knuckles dragging across glass. Then a voice, right next to my ear. Jason. I jerked the wheel so hard the whole rig swerved. I nearly ran off into a ditch. I stomped the brake and brought the truck to a screeching, shuddering stop on the shoulder. And that's when I made the second mistake. I looked. She was standing right outside my window. No expression, no malice. Just this look like recognition. And then she spoke again, but her lips didn't move. I know who you are. I fumbled for the door lock. Get the hell away from me. I shouted. She didn't move. The cab lights flicked on by themselves. And then, behind me, I heard the passenger door click open. I spun around, flashlight in hand, heart thudding so loud it felt like it would crack my ribs. The seat was empty, but the door was open. I climbed over, slammed it shut, and locked everything. Threw the truck in gear and gunned it, tires spinning as I tore out of there. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. She was standing in the road, not watching me flee, watching something else, something inside the truck. I made it to the drop, site at 12:08 a.m., 8 minutes late. Foreman came out to help unload, said I looked pale as hell. I didn't say much, just handed him the manifest and got ready to head back. But then, as I turned to climb back in the cab, he said something that stopped me cold. "You bring someone with you tonight?" I froze, slowly turned around. "No." "Why?" He pointed, at the cab. "Looked like someone was sitting in the passenger seat a second ago. Thought I saw a woman's head in the window." I didn't answer, I just got in and drove. I haven't worked since that night, trucks parked in my drive, keys on the hook. Can't bring myself to touch it, and last night, I swear to you, I heard the knock again. Not from the truck, not from the window, from inside the house. 3 slow knocks on my bedroom closet door. I don't know what she is, a ghost, a curse, some kind of memory wrapped in fog. But I know this. If you see her, don't stop. Don't roll down your window, and whatever you do, don't let her say your name. You ever drive through a part of the country that just feels wrong? I've been long-hauling freight for almost 16 years now, mostly on night runs. East Tennessee, up through Kentucky, and sometimes deep into the Virginias if the pay's decent. I'm used to solitude, used to the dark. The hiss of tires on blacktop, coffee gone cold, and the hum of AM radio stations whispering static in the middle of nowhere. But there's one patch of road I'll never drive again. It was October. I remember that clearly because the air had just turned. Not cold yet, but that crisp bite was starting to show up in the mornings. I'd picked up a load of palletized roofing from Knoxville, headed up to a site outside of Charleston. Standard overnight drop, nothing out of the ordinary. I took Highway 25E like I always do, cutting through the Cumberland Gap, then linking, up to 119. It's mostly forest through there, steep ridges on either side, and no streetlights to speak of. Just you, your rig, and whatever's out there watching from the trees. I wasn't spooked at first. Like I said, I've done that stretch plenty, but about 30 miles south of Pineville, something shifted. It wasn't sudden, just gradual. The radio signal started warbling, like it was underwater. My high beams didn't seem to reach as far, even though I hadn't touched the dimmer, and the trees felt like they were leaning in closer than usual, almost like the forest was listening. That's when I hit the dark stretch. I don't know what else to call it. 1 second, I'm cruising fine, sipping cold gas station coffee, George Jones low on the stereo. The next, it's like someone turned the world off. My brights were on, but they didn't do a damn thing, I mean nothing. I could barely see the hood of the truck. The white line on the shoulder vanished. The yellow divider melted into the black. I've driven in fog. I've driven through rain so heavy you have to pull over. This wasn't like that. This was darkness. Thick. Oily. Solid. I let off the gas and eased onto the brakes, not wanting to overreact, but it was too late. Something was in the road. A figure. Right in the middle of my lane, clear as day. I remember this part like it's burned into my brain. He, or it, was facing me, standing stiff. Not moving. No reaction to my headlights bearing down. Just a silhouette. Male, maybe. Tall. Not wearing anything reflective. No flashlight. Just standing there like they'd been waiting for me to show up. I slammed the brakes so hard I felt the freight shift behind me. Tires screeched. My seatbelt caught across my chest, and then I went right through him. Not past him. Through. No impact. No resistance. Just empty road. I jolted back in my seat and grabbed the wheel tight, heart racing like I'd just missed a head-on collision. My truck came to a crawl. I threw on the flashers and coasted to a stop on the shoulder, or at least where I hoped the shoulder was. For a few seconds, I just sat there in stunned silence, listening to my own breath. Then I stepped out of the cab, flashlight in hand, boots crunching on gravel that I could barely see. The air smelled different, not like diesel or wet trees. Something sour, metallic, like pennies in your mouth. "Hello?" I called out. The beam from my flashlight didn't penetrate more than a few feet. "Hey, you okay?" No answer. Just stillness. and a heavy, pressing silence that didn't belong out there. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I'd hit that point of exhaustion where your brain starts pulling shapes out of shadows. But I knew what I saw. The outline, the stillness, the presence. I walked back up to the road, shined the light across both lanes. Nothing. I even checked under the truck like maybe I'd actually hit something and just didn't feel it. Though, that made no sense at all. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the sound, or the lack of it. No crickets, no wind, no distant rustle of a raccoon in the brush, just me, and the dark, and the growing sense that I wasn't alone. I turned to get back, in the cab, and that's when I saw the handprint on the passenger side window. It was faint, barely visible in the condensation from the night air. But it was there. 5 fingers, stretched wide, pressed from the inside. Inside. I froze. My truck was locked. Had been since I left the depot. I keep it that way, always. It's habit. There's no way someone got in. I pulled the door open slowly, half expecting someone to lunge at me. Empty. But the smell was stronger now. That same metallic tinge like wet iron or blood. I checked the sleeper compartment. Nothing. Even slid my hand under the mattress with a racing heart, like maybe something had crawled in. Still nothing. But the handprint was real. I wiped it off, with my flannel sleeve, and climbed back in, locking both doors this time. Started the engine, turned the headlights back on, and finally, the darkness lifted. Like it had never been there. The high beams worked again. The trees looked normal, the shoulder was visible. I was back in the world. I kept driving, didn't stop again until I reached Charleston. Didn't sleep that morning. Just dropped the load, signed the paperwork, and sat at a diner nursing a mug of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. For a while, I convinced myself it was fatigue. I even made an appointment with an eye doc in Lexington the following week. He ran the usual tests, said my vision was fine, no retinal damage, no migraines, no hallucinations. I didn't tell him about the handprint, didn't tell anyone until a few weeks later. That's when I heard about Wade. Wade drives for a steel company down in Middlesboro. We've shared more than a few beers over the years, traded stories, swapped road warnings. He called me up in a panic one night, said he hit something on 119 around 1 a.m. Said a man just appeared in the middle of the road, no warning. He tried to swerve, but too late. Thought he hit him full on. He got out, searched the area for an hour. No body, no blood, no damage to the grill, no impact marks. Just one thing. A handprint on the inside of his back window. We didn't laugh about it. We didn't chalk it up to exhaustion, because both of us had seen him, and both of us had the same exact experience. That road, that stretch, it's like a fold in the world, a place where something's not quite lined up, where you're not just driving through forest anymore, you're passing through something else, something that watches, that waits, and maybe follows. It happened one more time. 3 nights ago. I wasn't even hauling, just heading home from my brother's place near London, Kentucky. After helping him replace a busted water heater, I was tired. Took the back way because I didn't want to mess with the I-75 traffic. I hit the same spot around 11:15 p.m. Didn't realize it at first, but then the headlights started to fade. Radio died. Temperature dropped inside the truck, even though the heater was cranked, and up ahead in that same figure, still waiting. But this time, he moved. He didn't just stand there. He started walking toward the truck, slow, methodical, step by step, through the beams of my high beams like they weren't even on. I floored it. Didn't stop, didn't blink, didn't breathe. I passed right, through him again, just like the first time, but this time the cab went ice cold. The windows fogged from the inside, and my mirrors, all 3, fogged up completely. Then I heard it. Breathing. Right behind my seat. Slow. Raspy. Like someone with fluid in their lungs. I didn't turn around. I drove 40 miles straight, white-knuckled, until I hit a gas station just outside Logan. Pulled into the lot, jumped out, and searched the truck like a man possessed. Nothing, again. But when I turned back toward the truck to climb in, there was something sitting on my seat, something that hadn't been there before. An old, crumpled photo, black and white, of a man in a work uniform, standing next to a 1950s delivery truck. On the back, written in faded pencil, "Don't stop when he stands in the road. Don't look at him. Don't speak. Just drive." I don't know what's out there. A spirit? A warning? A memory stuck on repeat? But I've got a bad feeling it's not done with me. Because tonight, I walked out to my truck just to check on it, hadn't driven in a couple days. And there, clear as daylight, was another handprint. This time, on the inside of the windshield. And I haven't even started the engine. It took everything in me not to run back inside when I saw that handprint on the windshield. I just stood there, keys in hand, looking at it. It was fresh, clear, pressed from the inside. 5 long fingers stretched wide, like whoever, whatever, left it had been watching the front yard from the driver's seat. I hadn't driven the truck in 2 days. I hadn't unlocked it. Hell, I hadn't even touched the door. My first thought was rational, or tried to be. Maybe Wade had come by messing around. Maybe one of the neighbor kids thought it'd be funny. But I lived down a gravel road outside of Corbin, middle of nowhere. Nobody just shows up out here without headlights or dogs barking. And besides, that handprint was too big. Long fingers, thin palm, too wide for any normal man. I stepped closer, slowly, and that same scent hit me again. Faint, but there. Metallic and cold like rusted iron. I unlocked the door and opened it, flashlight in hand. Nothing looked out of place. Seats clean. No tracks on the floor mats, no frost inside, but the air was off. Heavy, still, like the inside of an old tomb. I checked the back. Under the seat, sleeper, every corner, empty. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just missed something, like it had slipped out right before I got there. I wiped the print with the inside of my sleeve, climbed in, and sat there for a minute with the door still open, engine off, interior lights humming above me, and then I made the biggest mistake of my life. I turned the key. The truck started fine. No issues. Just the low rumble of diesel kicking on. Everything was normal. Gauge steady, lights bright. Nothing strange, until I checked the rear view. For half a second, no more, I saw something in the back of the sleeper. A shape, crouched, watching me. But when I turned around, it was gone. Just the shadows of my flannel blanket rolled up by the wall. Still, I got out, again, slammed the door. Locked it, went back inside. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring out the window at the truck, just waiting for something to move inside. I even left the porch light on, like it would somehow keep it from coming back. At some point near dawn, I must have dozed off in the recliner, woke up to a sound I'll never forget. The horn. One long, slow blast from my truck. I jolted upright, heart pounding, ran to the door, yanked it open, but the truck was empty, engine off, headlights off. No one in the cab, no footprints in the frost on the gravel. Just silence, and the faintest whiff of that rusted iron smell drifting through the trees. I called Wade later that morning, told him everything, the handprint, the shape, the horn. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "It did the same thing to me, the horn, like it was letting me know it was still here, still watching." I asked him if he still had that old photo, the black and white one from the night he passed through the dark stretch. He did, said it was in a box under his bunk. I asked him to send me a photo of the back again, just to be sure. When the picture came through, my stomach dropped. There was more writing. Under the part I'd remembered, "Don't stop when he stands in the road," someone had scribbled a second line, barely legible. "If he gets in, he doesn't leave." That was 3 days ago, and I'm telling you now, I think it's in me, not just near me. not watching from the shadows. Inside. Because things have started to change. I'll be in the shower and hear footsteps in the hallway, even though I live alone. The dog next door, who used to bark every time I came outside, now just whimpers and hides under the porch when I walk by. I was in the grocery store yesterday, and a woman I'd never met looked at me like she recognized me, but not in a good way. Like she'd seen me in a bad dream once. And the worst part? I keep losing time. I'll be driving to town and suddenly find myself pulling into my driveway with no memory of the ride. I found dirt under my nails this morning. Dark, reddish dirt. I hadn't been outside. I hadn't touched anything. Last night, I woke up in the truck. No memory of getting there. Cab was warm, engine running, and there was a second set of muddy footprints on the floorboards, leading from the passenger side into the sleeper, and then back out. Wade won't answer my way. Calls now. I drove by his place earlier. His truck's still there, but the front door was wide open. No lights on, no movement. I didn't go in, I couldn't. I think he's gone, or worse. I think he let it in. Whatever it is, it uses the road to get close. But once it's in, once you acknowledge it, look at it, let it knock. It doesn't. Leave, it becomes you. It waits. Takes over inch by inch, and if I'm right, I don't think I have much time left. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. I haven't slept in 2 nights. My hands shake constantly, and when I talk, sometimes it doesn't sound like me. I caught my own reflection in the truck's window earlier, just a quick glance, and I swear the eyes looking back weren't mine. Too dark, too still, like he's behind them now, and just a few minutes ago. There was a knock on my front door. 3 slow, hollow knocks. Didn't answer it, I won't answer it, but I can feel it waiting, outside the door, or maybe inside the mirror. If you ever find yourself driving at night on somewhere in Kentucky or maybe West Virginia, maybe even farther than that now, and your headlights go dim, if the radio dies and the trees press in, and you see a man standing in the middle of the road, still, silent, waiting, do not stop. Do not blink. Do not roll down your window. Do not let him speak. Because if you do, he gets in, and once he's in, you don't get out. Truckers get used to strange nights. You live enough of your life on the road, eating gas station burritos, sleeping in your cab, staring into fog at 2 a.m., and you start accepting a certain level of weird. I've seen foxes limp across the median like ghosts, heard voices echo out of truck stop bathrooms that were supposed to be empty. Even watched headlights come up behind me on old country roads only for the car to never pass and never show up again. But nothing ever stuck with me like that night outside Hazard, Kentucky. It was the end of October, right before Halloween, and I was headed north out of Tennessee, taking a load of HVAC units up to Pikeville. Not a bad route, honestly. Plenty of mountain curves, sure, but the air was cold and clean, and my rig was running smooth. I'd started late that day, paperwork delay, and by the time I hit Hazard, it was already past 1 a.m. Now, if you've ever driven that stretch of Highway 15, you know there ain't much past the gas stations and faded strip malls of Hazard, but old coal roads, steep drop-offs, and pitch-black tree lines. Nothing but dark woods pressing in on both sides of the road like they want to swallow you whole. I was tired, not drifting off tired, but the kind where your neck's stiff, your eyelids feel tight, and you start misjudging distances between reflectors. I knew better than to keep pushing it. That's how you end up on the evening news in a smoking ditch. So when I spotted a gravel pull-off just past a faded old Elkhorn Creek sign, I took it, killed the lights. Parked, crooked on the shoulder, engine off. Cab light on, just long enough to dig my thermos out of the side pocket and crack the window an inch for air. Then I crawled into the sleeper and passed out. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Could have been 2 hours. Could have been 20 minutes. All I remember is the sound. Tap, 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 right by my left ear. It took me a second to realize where I was. That disoriented, half-awake panic that hits when you don't recognize the dark around you. My heart was pounding before I was even fully conscious. Tap, Tap. This time, harder, more deliberate. I sat up slow, rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, and reached for the flashlight I keep clipped by the bunk. Another tap, driver's side window. For a second, I figured maybe it was a state trooper doing a welfare check, or maybe another driver needing help. I leaned forward and pulled the curtain back. No one. But the window, it was smeared. Multiple handprints. Some big, some small, all muddy, streaked across the glass in half-formed palms, long, dragging fingers, like someone had pressed their face and hands all over the side of the cab. I turned the flashlight on and shined it around outside. Empty. No other cars. No sign of headlights on the road. Just that thick Appalachian dark and the trees swaying in. The wind. And then I noticed the smell. It was faint but foul. Like wet earth and something rotted. Like a damp cellar that hadn't been opened in years. The kind of smell that clings to your throat and settles behind your eyes. I wiped the inside of the window. Clean. The handprints were on the outside. I opened the door and stepped out with my light. My boots hit the gravel hard. I scanned the area. Nothing but my own tire tracks and a few small stones where I'd pulled in. No footprints. No mud. No one hiding behind the trailer. Just me. And that creeping feeling that I was being watched. I didn't sleep again. I climbed back. In the cab, locked the doors and sat in the driver's seat, engine running. Kept the headlights on and pointed at the trees. Every few minutes I'd catch myself staring into the woods, sure I'd seen something move. But every time I shined the light, nothing was there. Around 4:30 a.m., I pulled back onto the road and kept moving. Didn't even stop in Pikeville. Just dropped the trailer at the lot and signed off. Drove empty all the way to a rest stop near Charleston and slept until noon. I told myself it was a one-off. Some punk kids messing around. Maybe I'd parked near a trail I didn't see. That's what I believed, until it happened again. 3. Nights later, I was on a backhaul through Virginia. I'd taken a load of pallets out to Grundy and was coming back with an empty trailer. It was just past midnight, and I was near a place called Buchanan County, winding along a remote patch. A 460 when my low fuel light came on. There wasn't much around. I saw a faded scenic overlook sign and figured I'd coast in, get my bearings, maybe call dispatch to see where the next station was. Same setup as last time. Gravel shoulder, no lights, nothing but trees and cliffs. I parked, turned off the engine, checked my phone, no signal, pulled the curtain shut, but I didn't go to sleep. I just sat on the edge of the bunk staring into the dark cab. Then, thud, from the roof of the cab, followed by scratch, like nails across metal. Froze. Then another tap, this time on the passenger side. I jumped forward and yanked the curtain open just in time to catch a shadow. I'm not making this up. Sliding down the side mirror like a person. But it didn't move like a person. It moved too slow. Too smooth. Like it was being poured down the glass. By the time I opened the door and stepped out with my light, the air was completely still. Not even wind in the trees. And just like before, muddy handprints. Only this time they weren't just on the driver's window. They were on the roof, the back doors, even one up high near the center marker light. A place no one could reach without a ladder. I stood there for a long minute, light scanning the gravel, the trees, my own hands shaking. And then I saw it. At the far edge of the overlook, just where the mist started rolling off the drop, a figure, barely visible. Still, facing the truck. I whispered, "Hello?" Before I could stop myself, the figure didn't move. I turned to open the door and get back in the cab, maybe 30 seconds tops. And when I looked back, it was gone. Not walked away, not faded, just gone. Like it had sunk back into the trees. When I told a guy at a truck stop in Bluefield the next day, he didn't even act surprised. Just nodded slowly and said, "You been pulling off to sleep. Near them old mine roads?" I said, "Yeah." He looked around and leaned closer. "Don't do that," he whispered. "Not in these hills, not in October. Folks say there's things up there that ain't been buried, right? Things that still walk." I asked him what kind of things. He shook his head. "Miners mostly. Whole families. Died in floods or collapses. Got left behind when the companies packed up. Some say they don't even know they're dead. Just wake up hungry. Looking for warmth." He paused. "Looking for a cab light. Now I don't know if I believe all that folklore stuff. I don't know if what I saw was some kind of spirit and or something more human. But here's the thing. I've moved on to different routes now. Stayed closer to the interstates. No more late-night runs through coal country. Yet just last night I parked at a truck stop near Ashland. Full lot, middle of town. Bright overhead lights. And when I came back from the bathroom, there was a muddy handprint right in the center of my windshield, with drag marks leading up the hood, like someone had crawled up and just stared in. And when I opened the door, engine still warm, the cab smelled like wet earth, like someone had been inside, waiting. Didn't drive for 2 days after that. I stayed holed up in a cheap motel outside Ashland, blinds drawn, truck parked right under the security camera. I told myself it was just mud from the lot, maybe some kid messing around while I was inside. But no matter how many times I tried to explain it away, I kept coming back to the smell, that deep, wet earth rot. Cold as a root cellar, old, and it hadn't been there when I left the cab. That's what really got me. I didn't tell anyone. Not dispatch, not other drivers, not even Wade, and he's my oldest friend on the circuit, because saying it out loud felt like inviting it in. But I couldn't stay in that motel forever. I had a delivery booked out of Lexington, appliance load bound for Wheeling, clean highway run, all interstate, no woods, no pull-offs. So I got in the truck, started driving, tried to pretend nothing happened. It was just before midnight when I hit Charleston. I was making good time. Fuel was steady, trailer quiet. For a while it even felt normal. That warm cab glow, engine humming under my boots, road sliding past in clean, dark lines. But right around mile marker 112, something changed. I started to feel watched. Not from the outside, from the back. You ever get that feeling like someone's sitting behind you in a movie theater? Like you know if you turn your head just a little, you'll see them out of the corner of your eye. That. I kept checking my mirrors, flashing the dome light, glancing over my shoulder. Nothing, but the air felt heavy. The heat was running, but my hands were cold, like something was pulling the warmth out of the cab. I turned the radio up. Country oldies. Didn't help. That's when I heard it again. Tap drivers, side window. Tap, tap. I didn't look. I couldn't. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew louder, angrier. Then came the scratching. Long, slow drags of nail or bone across the outside of the cab. I floored it. Didn't care about speed traps. Didn't care about jackknifing. I just needed to be moving. The sound followed, all the way up the side window across the roof like something was climbing over the cab. Then, bang, a loud thud on the roof, directly above me. I ducked. The rig swerved, tires kissing the shoulder. I corrected hard, hands shaking on the wheel, and then silence. Total. No tapping. No scratching, no music. Even the road noise felt distant. That's when I made my third mistake. I looked in the mirror. For a split second, just a flicker of movement. I saw something shift in the sleeper behind me. Not a person. Not quite. It was gray. Long-limbed, bent wrong, like someone who'd been buried in a tight box and forced themselves out years later. Eyes like wet clay. Face expressionless, hungry, and then it was gone. I pulled off at the next exit, heart hammering, and parked under the biggest, brightest canopy light I could find. Sat there, engine idling, doors locked, staring at my own reflection in the windshield. Breath fogged the glass, but something didn't add up. There were 2 patches of fog on the window. Mine. And one lower, off to the passenger side. I didn't look. I just turned the key, grabbed my duffel, and got out. Left the truck running. Lights. On, checked into the nearest roadside inn I could find. Didn't even care how much it cost. I just needed a wall between me and that rig. Next morning when I came back, cab was cold, lights off, engine dead, battery drained, and sitting in the passenger seat on top of my thermos was a small, mud-caked, rock, smooth, almost polished. The kind of thing you find at the mouth of a mine. Wrapped around it was a piece of decaying cloth, maybe denim once, but faded and damp. I didn't touch it, just stared, and behind me, the wind picked up, carrying that same scent, wet dirt, cold rot, something old and hungry. I tried to ditch the truck. I know how that sounds, paranoid, insane, but I'm telling you, I knew it had gotten into the rig. Or maybe it had always been there, just waiting for someone to stop in the wrong place at the wrong time. I drove to the company depot in Columbus and told them the truck was acting up. Engine trouble, battery issues, possible rodent smell in the vents. They gave me a replacement. I left the old rig on the lot, didn't even look back. For 2 whole days I thought I was in the clear. No tapping, no handprints, no dreams about things crouching in, dark corners behind my eyes, but then, on a rest stop run off I-71, I opened the door to my new cab, and there, sitting dead center on the driver's seat, that same rock, still wrapped in rotted denim, still slick with mud, and scrawled across the windshield, finger drawn in condensation from the inside, were 3 words, "You let me in." I don't know what it is, I don't know where it came from or what it wants, but I know this: it doesn't stay on the road anymore. It follows, hitches rides, sleeps curled in footwells and dark corners, feeding on silence, cold, and forgotten places. Maybe it was a man once, maybe a miner like that old trucker said. Maybe it died in the dark and never stopped waking up, but I let it in, and now it won't leave. I haven't driven in weeks. I sold the rig, moved back into my mom's old house outside Corbin, quit the road, but every night around 2 a.m., I hear it tap, tap, tap on the window, sometimes the front porch, sometimes the closet door, and sometimes from under the bed. I don't open the curtains. I don't check, because I already know what I'll see. Muddy handprints, and those gray, empty eyes, still hungry, still waiting, and still inside. I've been hauling long-distance routes out of Tennessee for about 11 years now, mostly solo runs through Appalachia, old mining towns, backwoods ridges, and winding passes most folks only see in the daylight. But when you're driving freight overnight, the mountains take on a different shape. Things get quieter, heavier. Sometimes the trees press so close you feel like you're the one being watched. That stretch heading south into Asheville, just off Highway 74, has always felt a little strange. Beautiful in the fall, especially late October when the leaves glow orange under your headlights. But once the sun dips and the fog rolls in, it's like the whole road forgets it's supposed to connect to anything else. This happened on a Thursday. I'd picked up a load in Boone, HVAC compressors, nothing fancy, and I was making good time figuring I'd pull into Asheville around 3:30 a.m., drop at the warehouse, grab a biscuit at the Shell station, and be halfway back to Johnson City before noon. It was a little after 3 when I saw it. A small roadside memorial just off the shoulder, cross made of old wood, plastic flowers stuck into the dirt, a faded photo, couldn't see the face, and 5 or 6 wax candles, still burning. I slowed instinctively, not stopped, just down to about 35. You see these kinds of markers all the time, especially out in the sticks. Drunk driver, teenager going too fast on a wet curve. Folks leave these tributes, and over time they disappear, swallowed by the weather. But these candles, they were burning, hard, despite the wind, and they weren't flickering like you'd expect, not dancing in the breeze. They were too steady, too synchronized, like someone had lit them all just a few minutes before I got there. I drove past, heart tapping a little faster than I'd admit. 15 seconds later, I checked my mirror. That's when I saw them, the candles, still glowing, still visible, even though I'd rounded a bend. even though I was already a good half-mile down the highway. They weren't getting smaller. They weren't going out, they were just there, holding steady, like a row of eyes watching me from the dark. I blinked hard, wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my hoodie, figured it was fatigue, maybe a reflection. Hell, maybe my taillights were bouncing off a mile marker just right. But every time I checked the mirror, every 30 seconds like clockwork, the candles were still there. Bright, burning, following. By the time I reached the state line, I'd gone full cold sweat. I don't scare easy, not from campfire stories or weird lights in the woods, but this didn't feel like something I could explain. It felt wrong. I cranked the defrost, flicked on the radio, tried to shake the nerves. Pulled into the Asheville lot at 3:28 a.m. sharp, unloaded the freight in record time. Didn't say a word to the overnight guy at the dock. But as I walked back to the cab, something made me stop. Right there on the step leading up to the door was a candle, white, unlit, but freshly used, wick still warm, and stuck to the side of it, pressed against the wax, was a sliver of wet wood, charred at one end, like it had just been burned in a flame. I didn't drive the truck home. I left it at the yard, told my boss I needed a day or two off, and took a lift back to my apartment in Arden. I figured I'd just get some rest, let my brain reset. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was stress. But that night, around 2:57 a.m., I woke up to the smell of melted wax. You ever burn one of those cheap candles from the dollar store? That sharp synthetic stink that fills the room even after it's out? My room was full of it. I sat up fast, turned on the bedside lamp. Nothing there. No candles. No smoke. But the window was open, only about 6 inches, just enough to let in the cold. And I never sleep with the window open. I live on the second floor. No fire escape. Nothing out there but the roof slope. Still, I got up, locked it tight, shut the curtains, and sat on the edge of the bed trying to slow my pulse. Then I noticed the dirt. Little black smudges, like someone had climbed in with muddy fingers and held the frame. I didn't sleep again that night. Next morning I called around. Friends, old-timers I trust in the trucking world. I even got a hold of Dave Rutherford. Runs freight between Knoxville and Asheville 3 nights a week. Been doing it for over 20 years. I told him what happened. Didn't sugarcoat it. He got quiet. Didn't laugh. Didn't call me crazy. Just said, "Was it the curve near Old Mill Gap?" I froze. "Yeah," I said. "How'd you know?" He sighed. "You're not the first. I've seen 'em too. Candles on the side of the road that never go out. Show up again in the rear view, no matter how far you drive. Sometimes you bring them back with you." "Back with you?" I asked. Dave paused, then said, "Yeah, that's how they find new drivers." I didn't know what he meant at first, but over the next 2 nights, I started to understand. The candles stopped being out there. They started showing up closer. First it was one sitting on the hood of my truck, then one at the foot of my stairs, then 3 of them lined up on the sidewalk outside my apartment like they'd marched there together. Always waxy white, always recently used, but never warm, never lit, until that 3rd night. That night, I saw the first one burning. It was on my kitchen table. No doors opened, no windows broken, no sign of forced entry. Just that candle, flickering gently in the center of the table, burning steady, and sitting next to it, barely visible in the dim. Ida was a folded piece of paper. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. It was old. Yellowed at the edges, smelled like mildew and cheap smoke, and on the front, written in shaky handwriting, Cole Harding, 3:03 a.m. I don't know how it knew my name. I don't know how it got in. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the couch, watching the candle burn itself down to a puddle. Sometime around dawn, I went outside to breathe. Think. That's when I saw them. Dozens of them. all along the sidewalk, all the way down the block, flickering in the morning wind, and not one of my neighbors had noticed. They just walked past, oblivious, like the candles weren't even there. Later that day, I did something stupid. I drove back to the spot, back to the curve near Old Mill Gap, where I first saw the memorial. It was gone. No flowers, no wood cross, no picture, just dirt and flattened grass, but the air smelled like wax, and tucked between the rocks, barely poking out, was a second note. No envelope, no name this time, just 4 words, scratched in what looked like charcoal. You're keeping them alive. I left. Fast. But, I swear, as I pulled onto the highway, I caught something in the corner of my eye. A figure, standing just off the tree line, face in shadow, holding a candle, watching me drive away. I drove straight home from that curve near Old Mill Gap, didn't stop, didn't check my mirrors, just white-knuckled it back to my apartment and parked like the devil was chasing me, which, honestly, at that point, didn't feel that far off. Sat in the cab for a long time, engine ticking down, watching the door to my building, waiting for something. I don't know what. That figure in the trees, maybe. Another candle. A sound. Nothing happened. But I could feel something had followed me. That night, I didn't sleep. Didn't even pretend to. I sat on the living room floor, back to the wall, holding a flashlight in one hand and the crumpled second note in the other. You're keeping them alive. I kept turning those words over in my head. What the hell did it mean? Who were they? I wanted to believe this was all stress. A break in my mind from too many sleepless nights on the road. But around 3:10 a.m., I heard the front door rattle. Not open, not knock, just rattle like someone was trying the knob quietly. I got up slow. Didn't turn on any lights, just crept over to the peephole and looked, and my stomach flipped. There was a candle sitting right on the doormat, lit, burning strong despite no wind in the hall, and behind it, a figure not pressed to the door, not even looking at it, just standing at the far end of the hallway and maybe 30 feet away, like it had walked me home and was making sure the delivery had arrived. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Eventually, the hallway light flickered, once, and the figure was gone. The next morning, I called Dave Rutherford again, the older trucker who told me I wasn't the first to see those candles. He answered on the second ring. Before I could speak, he said, "You went back to the curve, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He sighed. "They don't like that." "Who are they?" I asked. "People who died on the road," he said flatly. "At that spot. That curve's taken more than just a few locals, haulers too. Some of them never got memorials. No services. Their bodies were recovered, sure, but not remembered. So they made their own way to be seen, to be kept alive." "The candles?" I asked. "They only burn for the living," he said. "If you see one burning, it means they've picked you." I sat there in silence, the hair on my arm standing straight up. He continued, "The more you notice them, the stronger they get, the brighter they burn. That's why you gotta ignore them, Cole. No matter what. No notes. No staring back. No going back to the spot." "But they followed me home," I said. Another long pause. "Then you got a real problem." By the next night, the candles weren't just outside. I found one in the bathroom sink, lit, another on my kitchen counter, another on the passenger seat of my truck, glowing behind closed doors and rolled-up windows. They weren't flickering anymore. They were pulsing, like a heartbeat, like they were trying to communicate. I started feeling lightheaded in my own apartment, kept smelling wax and scorched air, couldn't drink coffee without tasting smoke. I tried throwing one of the candles into the garbage, and it reappeared on my nightstand less than an hour later. Wick, still burning. I finally broke down and drove out to the library in Asheville. Asked the reference clerk for any articles on accidents near Old Mill Gap. She pulled some archives for me, small-town obits mostly. What I found chilled me. 13 accidents in the past 15 years, 11 deaths. Different causes. Brake. Failures, icy roads, even a freak tree fall. But all within a 5-mile stretch of that bend. Then I saw one that stopped me cold. A rig driver. My aged name was Caleb Harding, same last name as mine. No relation I know of. Died in 2004, jackknifed at the curve. Trailer went off the edge. He burned alive before anyone could reach him. The article mentioned a roadside memorial. Wooden cross, photo, candles. Family said they kept returning to relight them, but one day, they vanished. I drove out again. I know, stupid. But I had to. This time I went during the day just before sunset, parked about 50 feet from where I'd first seen the memorial. The shoulder looked different now, like it had been disturbed. Soil packed down, almost like it had been stomped out, but the air still smelled like wax. I stepped toward the woods, and that's when I saw them. Figures, dozens lined up among the trees. Hard to make out in the shadows, but definitely there. Not moving, not blinking. Each one holding a candle, and every single flame was lit. One by one, they started stepping forward. Slow, deliberate. No sound. No voices. Just candlelight dancing in the dusk. I backed away, stumbled to the truck, and took off, gravel kicking under my tires. I didn't look back until I was miles away, and even then, in the rear view, I could see them. Not the figures. Just the glow. Dozens of tiny flames stretched out along the highway. Flickering steady. Following me again. That was last night. Tonight, it's worse. The candles are everywhere now. They line my windows. Sit on my dash. Glow from the cup holders. The floor. The corners of my room. I've stopped trying to put them out. They just come back. I don't sleep anymore. Don't eat much either. And every night at 3:03 a.m. sharp, one of them knocks. Not loud, not angry, just gentle, rhythmic knocking, like someone asking permission to come in. I haven't answered yet, but I don't know how long I can keep this. Up, they're not trying to hurt me, they're just trying to be seen, remembered. But it's like the more I see them, the more I become one of them. Last night I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, and for just a second my eyes looked gray, like smoke, like wax. And there was a flame behind me, dancing just above my shoulder. If you're reading this, if you ever find yourself driving south toward Asheville and you see a roadside memorial burning in the dark, don't stop, don't look back, don't check the mirror, because if you see the candles more than once, they'll see you too, and once they pick you, they never go out. I've been long-hauling through the Appalachians for over 16 years now. Coal, steel, timber, whatever pays. I've seen a lot of strange things on the roads through West Virginia. Deer frozen in your brights, weather that turns on a dime. Towns so quiet they don't even echo. But nothing ever stuck in my head. Not like that night on Route 52 just north of Welch. It was early November, crisp enough to see your breath but not yet icy. I'd picked up a trailer full of bituminous, out of Williamson, heading east toward Bluefield. The run was easy on paper, but the roads through that part of the state are rough even in daylight. Steep inclines, blind curves, mountain fog thicker than engine oil. At night, those roads feel ancient, heavy, like they were never meant for vehicles, just footsteps and whispering trees. It was close to 2 a.m. when it happened. I was alone on the stretch just past Rotorfield. Not a light in sight, except my own. I had George Jones low on the radio, a coffee cup balanced in the holder and the engine humming steady beneath me. The road curved hard along a mountainside, no guardrail, just trees and a black drop into nothing. Then I saw him. A man walking, on the shoulder, right there on the edge, his back to me. Just a shadow at first, hunched a little, moving slow. Not hitchhiking, not stumbling, just walking. I instinctively eased off the gas. Out there, at that hour, you don't pass people, on foot, No one walks Route 52 after midnight. There aren't even houses for miles in either direction. Just abandoned mines and dead roads. Still, I tapped the air horn, one quick burst, not to scare him, just to make sure he didn't drift into my lane. He didn't flinch, didn't turn around, didn't even react, so I slowed more, coming up level with him, maybe 10 feet between us, and that's when I saw his face, pale, wide-eyed, grinning, but not the kind of grin that says, "Hey, thanks for not hitting me." No, this was something else entirely. Lips stretched too, far teeth bared, eyes locked on me like he'd been waiting for me to come by. The weirdest part? He was already facing me. He hadn't turned. He was still walking away, head straight, but his face was looking at me like it had been reversed. And then, gone. Just gone. No step, no stumble, no duck into the trees. One blink, and the shoulder was empty, like he'd never been there. I slammed the brakes so hard the freight groaned behind me. My heart was thundering in my ears, hands shaking on the wheel. I threw on the flashers, sat in the lane for a second trying to catch my breath. Part of me wanted to back up, check the shoulder, shine the flashlight around, but I didn't. Because something in my gut, that old animal part of you, screamed not to. I put it in drive and kept moving. Didn't stop again until I hit a gas station in Bluefield around 3:30. I didn't even pump fuel. Just parked in the glow of the overhead lights and sat there, cab door locked, trying to shake the image from my head. That grin, those eyes, not scared, not angry, just knowing, like he saw through me. I didn't tell anybody about it the next day. Figured it was fatigue, too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Maybe a reflection, maybe a trick of fog and nerves, but then it happened again. 3 nights later, same route, same time. Only this time I saw him farther ahead. He was already standing in the middle of the road, not walking, not moving, just standing, arms at his side, grinning. I hit the brakes, horn blaring, and once again, gone. No motion, just blink and vanish. That's when I started keeping the dash cam rolling full time. The recordings didn't help. Every time I saw him, the footage would flicker, static, a blur of dark shapes, or frames missing entirely. Sometimes the cam would just stop recording for 30 seconds, long enough for the encounter to be over. Then kick back on like nothing happened. I brought it to a mechanic. Told him I was having power issues. He checked it out and said, "Your rig's fine, but that cam's acting like it's picking up interference." "From what?" I asked. He just shrugged. One night, I mentioned it to a guy named Phil. Old timer. I sometimes pass at way stations. Drives reefer loads through Logan County. He's been around long enough to have stories. I said, "You ever see anything weird near Rotorfield? Real late?" He gave me a long look, not a joking one. "You seen the grinner?" My stomach flipped. "I think so." He nodded. "Yeah, I saw him once, back in '09. Came out of the trees around midnight, walked right past my truck, smiled like he knew I wouldn't do a damn thing about it." "What is it?" I asked. "No one knows," Phil said. "But my uncle used to say there's things in these hills older than the roads. Some walk like men, some look like us but aren't. They only show up to people traveling alone. People with open windows and tired eyes." He paused. "You didn't open the window, did you?" I didn't answer. Because I had, just a crack, that first night, when I was coasting along and needed the breeze. Phil nodded slowly like he already knew. They always need a way in. After that, things got worse. I started dreaming about the road, but it wasn't quite right. Too dark, too narrow. My headlights wouldn't work, and I'd see that pale face grinning out from the trees, walking right beside the truck, keeping pace no matter how fast I drove. I'd wake up gasping, convinced he was in the cab with me. One time I reached out in the dark and touched something cold. I jumped up, slammed the sleeper light on, empty. But on the floor, just barely visible, was a footprint, damp bare, too big to be mine. The final straw came 2 weeks ago. I was headed east through McDowell County. Clear weather, full tank, no fog. Everything felt normal. Then I looked in the mirror. He was sitting in the passenger seat, clear as day, facing me, grinning. No sound, no movement. I swerved so hard I almost jackknifed the load, pulled into the shoulder, jumped out, heart slamming. Cab was empty, no sign of entry, no damage, nothing. But the seat was still warm, and something was left behind. A tooth, human, yellowed, sitting on the dash like a gift. That's when I stopped driving nights, refused any after-dark runs, changed my schedule, told dispatch it was health reasons, swapped rigs, switched routes. But I still see him, sometimes standing at intersections, watching me through gas station windows, reflected in my side mirrors just for a split second, always smiling, like he's not done with me yet, like he's waiting for me to slip, crack a window, close my eyes too long, let him in. It's been 3 weeks since the last time I drove Route 52 at night. 3 weeks since I saw that pale, wide-eyed face sitting beside me in the cab, grinning like it had won, and I swear to you, I haven't been the same since. I changed rigs, swapped out my dash cam, got a daytime route hauling drywall between Beckley and Lexington. Easy stretch, all interstate, no winding roads, no midnight hills. But it didn't matter. Because the grinning man isn't just a part of the road. He's a part of me now. Started small. One morning I found mud on the passenger side floor mat. Not a lot. Just a thin track like someone had stepped in with one bare foot. I cleaned it up, thinking maybe I'd tracked it in myself. Then came the fingerprints, inside the windshield. Long streaks, like a hand dragging down from the top corner. Smudges too far across to be mine. But what finally broke me was what I found. 2 nights ago, I'd just finished a drop in Winchester and parked the rig in the lot behind my motel. It was early, maybe 9:30, and I figured I'd grab a hot shower and crash for once. I went to grab my duffel from the back seat. That's when I saw it. Another tooth. Same yellowed enamel, same dull edge. Sitting right on top of my folded hoodie, like it had been placed there, like whoever left it knew I'd find it. I called Phil. I hadn't spoken to him since the day he warned me about letting him in. He picked up on the first ring. "You still seeing him?" he asked. "No hello?" I told him everything. The footprints, the tooth, the sense that he was still in the truck even when I couldn't see him. Phil got real quiet for a while. Then said, "He's riding with you now." "What the hell does that mean?" I snapped. "He picks people," Phil said. "Always folks who notice him too long, or look back after they pass. That first time, when you slowed for him, that's when he picked you." "So what do I do?" Phil hesitated. "Nothing." "Nothing?" "You keep driving, you ignore him, you never speak, and for God's sake, you never stop when you see him again." But I did see him again, and I did stop. It wasn't intentional. I was on a side road outside of Salyersville, a detour from some lane closures up on 23. Not my usual route. It was just past 10 p.m., fog settling thick across the hollers. I'd taken a wrong turn and ended up on some coal road I didn't recognize. And that's where I saw him, standing dead center in the road. Same grin, same wide eyes, same pale, death-waxed, face lit up in my high beams. I hit the brakes hard in my throat. I remembered Phil's warning. Don't stop. Don't acknowledge him. Don't let him in. But I had already stopped. The cab filled with that same oppressive silence, like the whole world was waiting to see what I'd do next. And then he started walking. Slow, steady steps toward the driver's side. I locked the doors. He kept coming. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just certain. He reached the window and leaned in close. I stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles popped. Then he knocked. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared into the fog, praying he'd go away. But then he said my name. Randy. Clear as day, like gravel in the throat. and in that moment my body acted on its own. I turned my head, just a little, just enough to see him in my periphery. Wrong. That's the only word I can use for it. His face didn't move like flesh. It twitched, like static on a broken screen. His eyes were too dark, teeth too straight, mouth too wide, and that grin, like it had no end. I woke up hours later, parked on the side of the highway. No memory of getting there. Cab lights on. Battery drained. Hands still locked around the wheel. And written in the fog of the windshield from the inside, backwards, were 4 words. Thanks for the ride. I haven't driven since. Haven't left the house. I keep the blinds drawn, and every door locked. But at night, just past 2, I hear footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging steps. Like someone pacing back and forth, waiting for me to come out. I can't. I've checked the house a dozen times. Nothing there. But every morning I find something left behind. A piece of coal on the coffee table. Wet gravel on the bathroom mat. A streak of grime across the inside of the front door, and every time, the smell of cold road. I'm not sure what he is. A ghost. A curse. Something born in the bones of the mountain. But once you see him, he sees you. And once he rides with you, you don't get to drive alone ever again. So if you're ever rolling down Route 52 in the dead of night and you see a man walking the shoulder, pale and smiling and still, don't slow down, don't look at him, and whatever you do, don't let him in. I've been hauling up and down the Appalachian corridor for over 20 years now, long enough to know which roads breathe quiet, which ones bite back, and which ones you don't park on after dark. But there's a stretch near Mountain Gap, off Highway 74 in western North Carolina, that still makes my hair stand on end. It's not even a dangerous pass by normal standards, 2-lane blacktop, some winding turns, but nothing too steep. Just old forest pressing in close, guardrails rusted to nothing, and maybe one turnout in 10 miles. The kind of place where radio dies and you get that deep gut-feeling silence. If you know, you know. This all started back in early November, just before the cold settled in for real. I'd picked up a load of pressure-treated lumber out of Murphy and was cutting east toward Asheville. Fog had rolled in heavy around dusk, and by the time I reached that mountain stretch, I could barely see 20 feet past my brights. To keep myself sharp, I flicked on the radio. Now, usually, you'll pick up country stations, trucker talk, or even gospel channels out in these hills. But this stretch? Dead. Like the road was swallowing every frequency. That night was no different, just hissing static. But still, I let it roll. The noise helped me stay alert. 10 minutes in, I started to doze. Not full-on nodding off, but my eyelids felt like they had bricks tied to them. The fog wasn't letting up. If anything, it was thickening, curling like smoke over the hood. Then the static changed. It wasn't like it suddenly became clear. It shifted, like someone twisting the dial on an old CB, quick chirps and pops. Then buried deep in the fuzz, I heard it. A voice. Not just any voice. A woman's voice. At first, it sounded far away. Just a whisper. I leaned closer to the dash, turned the volume up without thinking. It was faint but rhythmic, like someone mumbling into a busted microphone, and then, clear as day, she said my name. Carl. I froze. I didn't imagine it. I know my name. I know how it sounds when it's said by someone who knows. You too. I yanked the knob to turn the radio off. The silence hit hard like a vacuum. Just tires on asphalt, the hum of the engine, and my heart banging in my ears. But the whisper didn't stop. It kept going. Carl. Carl, slow down. My skin went cold. The radio was off. And still I heard her. Not through the speakers anymore. It was like she was right behind my seat, speaking low and steady, like she was trying not to scare me. I yanked the cord and unplugged the damn radio from the console. That's when the whisper turned into a plea. Please stop. I was gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles were bone white. I didn't stop. Hell no. I pressed harder on the pedal. I just wanted to get through the pass, out of the fog, out of that whisper's reach. Whatever it wasn't normal. I'm not some jumpy rookie, but this felt wrong in my bones. And then I saw her. She was standing in the middle of the road, barefoot, soaked, hair matted across her face. White dress, thin as paper, hanging off her like wet tissue. Pale, legs, bruised knees, just standing there like she'd always been there. I slammed the brakes. Everything inside the cab lunged forward. The load of lumber groaned behind me. My whole rig shuddered to a stop, tires squealing on the slick pavement. I looked up, ready to jump out, maybe check on her. And she was gone. No thump. No scream. Nothing. Gone. I sat there in the middle of the road, cab idling, fog coiling, around the truck like it was alive. I even climbed down, flashlight in hand, walked up and down that stretch looking for any sign, a footstep, a dropped shoe, a torn piece of fabric. Nothing. Only sound was the drip of water off the guardrail and the distant creak of trees shifting in the cold wind. I climbed back into the cab, locked both doors and told myself to keep moving. But when I checked the mirror, the side one angled toward the sleeper, I saw a smear, like someone had dragged wet fingers across the inside glass. 3 lines, just 3, like a child pressing their hand and pulling down. My heart was hammering. I turned around fast, shining the flashlight into the back. Nothing, no one. Just my sleeping bag, a couple paperbacks, some tools, but I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight through to Asheville, parked at a lit-up truck stop with cameras and other drivers nearby, and waited until daylight to close my eyes. I didn't tell anyone, not right away. What could I say? Hey, I heard a voice say my name and then saw a ghost woman in the road. I kept driving that week, stayed off that stretch of 74 as best I could, but sometimes the route just forces you back. Mountain Gap's the only way through certain. Halls, about a week later, I was back on it. Bright daylight this time, clear skies. Thought I'd be fine. But just as I came around that same curve, the one with the rusted guardrail and the slight dip in the shoulder, my radio came on. I hadn't touched it. It clicked on by itself. Volume low, but rising on its own. Static, again. And then the same voice. Only this time she didn't say my name. She said a number. 17, 17, 17. Over and over. Soft and sing-song, like a little girl jumping rope. I turned the radio off again, but I was shaking. This time not scared, just rattled. Nervous. Maybe a little sick to my stomach. The next day, I finally mentioned it to Joe, an old buddy of mine who runs freight out of Johnson City. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me a long time and said, "You should talk to Kenny." Kenny ran with a company that used to do logging runs through that exact stretch. Retired early after an accident. I got his number and gave him a call. What he told me chilled me to the bone. Back in '97, he was hauling raw timber through Mountain Gap during a rainstorm. Came around that same bend and saw a woman standing in the road. Swerved to miss her, and jackknifed into the trees. Rolled once. Broke his collarbone and 6 ribs. When the cops showed up, they said there was no woman. No footprints. No reports of anyone missing. But Kenny swears he heard her before he saw her, whispering his name through the CB. She said, "Kenny, slow down." Just like that. Soft and calm. Like she knew me. That's when I started digging. I checked old news articles. Went to the county records office in Murphy on a day off. Looked for anything I could find tied to that stretch of road. And I found something. November the 2nd, 1985. A young woman named Lisa Weaver disappeared on her way home from a night shift at a diner in Bryson City. Her car was found abandoned off Highway 74 near, you guessed it, Mountain Gap. The engine was still running. Door wide open, radio playing static. She was never found. Last week I drove that route again. Against every instinct, I had a newer rig now. Built-in nav, touchscreen display, Bluetooth. I didn't even have the radio turned on. But about halfway through Mountain Gap, I heard a sound, not from the speakers, from inside the cab. It was coming from my phone. The Bluetooth was off. The screen was dark, but the voice still came through, distant and wet like it was underwater. And she said something different this time. Not my name, not a number, just one word, over and over. Behind. 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 I don't remember pulling over. I don't remember climbing out of the truck. All I remember is standing in the fog, flashlight trembling in my hand, and hearing footsteps behind me that didn't match mine. Slow, barefoot, getting closer. I turned around, and I turned around, but there was nothing there, just fog. Thick, wet, curling over the road like spilled milk. My flashlight cut through maybe 10 feet before it got swallowed whole. The sound of the footsteps? Gone. Like they'd never been there. Like maybe they were never real to begin with, but I knew what I heard. I stood there for a few more seconds, heart pounding, listening so hard it hurt. Nothing. Just the soft whir of the engine and the occasional pop from the cooling metal under the hood. I was still gripping the flashlight so tight my hand had gone numb. Then I looked back at the truck, and every hair on my neck stood up. The cab light was on. I never left it on. Habit. Years of driving taught me to conserve battery, especially when you're idling off-road. But it was glowing now, pale orange through the fog, and through the window I saw something. Movement. Just a flicker. Like someone had ducked behind the driver's seat. I should have run. I wanted to run. But instead, I walked back toward the truck, slow, like I was in a dream. Every step felt heavier than the last. The fog was clinging to my skin now, damp and icy. My breath was short, shaky. I rounded the front of the truck, looked up at the cab window again, and it was dark. The light had turned off. The door was still closed. Locked. I reached up, opened it quick, and swung the flashlight inside. Empty. Everything looked the same. Same air freshener swinging from the rear view. Same coffee thermos in the cup holder. Same old paperback sitting on the dash. But the air inside, it was wrong. It felt used, warm, like someone had just breathed in it. And there was a smell, faint like wet dirt and rusted metal, like someone had been sitting in the seat with muddy clothes. Then I noticed the windshield. There was writing on it, faint, but clear. Like someone had used a finger to draw in the condensation from the inside. It just said, "She's not done with you." That's when I snapped. I climbed back into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and floored it. Didn't even check the mirrors. I just needed out of that mountain. Stretch, I hit 60 in a 40 zone. Didn't care. But about a mile down, the road started to blur. I blinked hard, again and again, but the fog wasn't lifting. If anything, it was thickening. My brights were useless. All I could see was white. And then I saw the lights, tail lights, red, hanging low and dim in the mist. I slammed the brakes, again, skidded a little, managed to stop a few feet behind what looked like an old Ford sedan, maybe late 70s. Paint was gone, just a dull shell, one brake light out, trunk slightly ajar, no hazard lights, no movement. I honked. Nothing. I opened my door, against every screaming instinct in my gut, and called out, "Hey, you all right in there?" No answer. I took a few steps forward, fog swallowing my legs up to the knees, and that smell hit me again. Wet dirt, metal, and something else now. Something sweet and rotting. I circled toward the driver's side. The window was down, and inside, slumped over the wheel, was a woman, dark hair covering her face, thin dress, bare arms, bruised and pale. The same woman, the same one I'd seen in the road, and she moved. Not much. Just a twitch of her fingers on the steering wheel, like she was waking up. I should have backed off. I should have run. But I leaned in and said, "Ma'am, you need help?" She lifted her head, and I'll never forget what I saw. Her eyes were black, not bruised, black. No whites, no pupils, just endless, pit-black holes. And her mouth moved without sound, lips forming something silently. Then my radio came back on, full blast, even though it was still unplugged, and I heard her voice again. "Carl, behind you." I spun. There was a shape in the fog. Tall, thin, wrong. Not a man, not really. It looked like one at first. Long coat, wide shoulders, arms hanging too low. But it didn't move right. It just twitched. Flickered, like bad reception on an old TV. One frame, it was there. The next, it was closer. I backed away from the car, fast, but when I turned back, it was gone. Both the woman and the car, like they'd never been there. Just the empty road, my idling truck, and silence. I didn't drive for a while after that. Took 2 weeks off. Didn't leave the house. Kept the blinds shut. Every time the radio in my kitchen cracked with static, I jumped like a shot. Eventually, I told myself it was all stress, sleep deprivation, a hallucination. I wanted to believe that, but I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. A few nights ago, I was at a truck stop diner just west of Asheville. Guy in the booth next to me, young kid, maybe mid-20s, just starting out, struck up a conversation, asked if I'd ever run through Mountain Gap. I froze, told him to avoid it if he could. He laughed, said he already had, said the radio died on him the second he hit the fog. But get this, he said, grinning like it was just a campfire story. I heard something, a woman's voice, said a name over and over. Not mine, though, some dude named Carl. I didn't say anything, just paid my bill and left. And now every night before I sleep, I hear it again. The whisper, soft, patient, not from the radio anymore. From the walls, behind you, behind you. I haven't turned around in days, and I don't think I ever will. It happened on a Tuesday in mid-October, one of those overcast Appalachian days where the sky sits low and everything smells like wet pine. I'd been hauling a load of metal roofing panels from Knoxville up to a build site in the hills outside Boone, North Carolina. The route took me through some nasty terrain, sharp curves, narrow shoulders, blind drop-offs, but I'd run it a dozen times before. I knew which turns to break early on, and where the locals parked their beat-up F-150s half in the lane to fish the creeks below. That day, though, something felt off from the start. I remember the morning clearly. I grabbed a biscuit and gas station coffee near Jefferson City, checked my tires, cleaned the mirrors. Everything normal. My dog, Juno, a blue heeler mix, was curled up in the passenger seat, asleep. She's always alert on the road, so the fact she stayed quiet most of that morning should have tipped me off. I hit the base of the grade around 1:45 p.m. This particular stretch didn't have an official name, but truckers around here call it Widow's Peak, mostly as a joke, but not always. It's a 9-mile incline that winds up a ridge, 2 lanes, barely a shoulder, and nothing but drop on your right if you hug the white line too close. The CB usually goes dead there, too remote. Too many trees. No cell bars either. I was about halfway up, engine groaning in 3rd gear when I heard the click. Not loud. Just that soft activation of the CB receiver. A little digital cough of static. At first I figured it was bleed-through from another rig somewhere behind me. Maybe a log hauler or gravel hauler climbing up the other side. But I hadn't seen headlights in my mirrors for a solid hour. Then the voice came through. Low. Male. A little ragged, like whoever it was hadn't used their throat in a while. You shouldn't be out here. I squinted at the CB unit like maybe I'd misheard. Then keyed up my mic. Say again? Silence. I waited a few beats, nothing but static. Juno perked her head up at that point, ears stiff. She turned her snout toward the sleeper, low growl rumbling in her chest. I keyed the mic again. You stuck somewhere up here? Need a hand? Nothing. Then the click again. That same subtle activation. Turn around, driver. And that was it. I let off the pedal just a hair, not enough to lose momentum, but enough to feel the shift in gravity on the incline. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't panicked either. It was flat, like someone just stating a fact, like a weather report, you shouldn't be out here. I reached over and adjusted the squelch knob on the CB, tried to ping a channel, maybe see if anyone else was nearby. Breaker 19, any ears on this hill? Nothing, just that hiss. White noise. And Juno? She was standing now, front paws on the dash, ears pointed straight back, hackles up. That dog doesn't spook easy. I've driven through ice storms, wildfires, and one idiot trying to break into my cab at a rest stop in Nashville. She barked him off like a demon, but right now she wasn't barking. She was whining. About 2 more miles up the grade, I hit a blind curve known as Devil's Elbow, the kind of curve where you pray nobody's coming down too fast. The trees there lean in real tight, like they're listening. As I came around the bend, my headlights caught something on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just a deer, roadkill maybe, but as I got closer, I saw it wasn't an animal at all. It was a CB radio, just the unit, ripped clean out of a rig, wires dangling like veins, sitting dead center on the yellow line. I slowed to a crawl. Didn't stop, though. Something told me not to. It was too perfect, too placed. The wires hadn't been run over, no scuff marks. It looked like it had been set there. That's when the CB crackled again. Don't stop. This time the voice was louder, closer, like it was coming from inside the cab. I unplugged the damn thing, yanked the power cord right from the dash. The screen went black. But I swear to God, the voice kept talking. Not from the radio, from somewhere behind me, like someone sitting on the edge of the sleeper. Keep going, Travis. I whipped around, flashlight in hand, breath caught in my throat. Nobody there. Just my old denim jacket hanging from the hook and Juno. Still, frozen. Staring past me into the darkness like she saw something I couldn't. I didn't sleep that night. I pushed through to the summit, heart thudding like a drum the whole time. It started to rain just before I crested the ridge, cold and needling. The kind that stings through the driver's side window even when it's rolled up. But the moment I passed the old fire tower at the top, it all stopped. The CB was dead. Silent. Juno relaxed. Curled up again. And I felt like I'd stepped out of something. Something bad. That night I parked at a gravel lot near a diner in Blowing Rock. It's a spot a few of us use when we're between loads. I sat with a couple older drivers just shooting the breeze over coffee and fried catfish. I told them what happened, the voice, the warning, the CB on the road. They got quiet. One guy, Warren, a tanker hauler who's been around since the '80s, just shook his head. He said back in 1999 a driver named Lenny Crawford went off that same grade, lost control on a wet turn. The trailer snapped the cab sideways and took him off the ridge. They never found the truck. Just a torn CB antenna tangled in the guardrail and deep gouge marks in the pavement. I hauled his last load down to Knoxville myself, Warren said, eyes low. Swore I'd never climb that ridge again, I still don't. I asked if Lenny ever used his CB much. Warren nodded. Wouldn't shut up, that guy. Always chatting on Channel 19. Friendly type. Then he paused, looked at me. What voice did you hear, Travis? I shook my head. Some guy. Raspy. Low. Why? Warren didn't answer. Just sipped his coffee and muttered. That's how Lenny used to sound when he was tired. The next day I tried to forget it. Told myself it was fatigue. Road paranoia. A fluke. Maybe someone was playing games on an old band signal. But as I left the diner and climbed back into my rig, I noticed something I hadn't before. On the back wall of the sleeper, where the condensation had fogged the glass from the inside overnight. There were finger streaks. Long, 4 of them, like someone had been resting their hand there watching me while I slept. I had one more delivery to make. Just outside a little place called Meat Camp off a back road that climbs another ridge. Tighter turns, no shoulder, no other drivers. The fog came in around 6:30 p.m. Juno was already pacing by then, whimpering low. I turned off the radio. Didn't want to hear anything. Didn't matter. The voice didn't need it anymore, because it was already in the cab. I heard the seat creak, felt the cushion compress just a little like someone sat down right behind me. I didn't turn around, I couldn't. Every instinct in my body told me not to look. I stared dead ahead through the windshield, hands locked tight on the wheel, trying to pretend I hadn't felt the shift of weight behind me. But I had. It was unmistakable. The springs in the seat let out a low, slow groan, the kind they make when someone settles in and leans back. And then I heard it breathe. Just once. A slow inhale, shaky and wet, like a sick man sucking cold air through a straw. Then silence. Juno was already gone from the seat. I hadn't even noticed her move, just that sudden absence beside me. When I finally glanced down, she was curled up under the dashboard, her nose buried between her paws, shaking so hard I could hear her tags clink. I had 6 more miles to go. Nothing but narrow switchbacks and no service the whole way. Whatever was in the sleeper didn't speak again. It just sat there. And somehow, that was worse. I kept driving, real slow now, barely touching the gas. The fog was so thick I couldn't even see the edge of the road. My brights only lit up a glowing white wall. My hands were sweating through the wheel wrap. I could feel the hair on my forearms standing up, a prickly electric sensation that ran from my wrists up to my shoulders. At the next curve, I checked the side mirror, and I swear I saw someone. Just for a second. A shape sitting directly behind me in the sleeper bunk. Shoulders hunched forward, head tilted slightly like they were watching me drive. But there was no face. Just a void. A silhouette that flickered and vanished the moment I blinked. I nearly ran off the road. About 2 miles out from the drop point, the grade leveled out for a bit. Just enough to breathe. I pulled off onto a wide dirt turnout, not even a proper pull-off, just some old logging trail, and killed the engine. I sat in silence. No music, no CB, nothing. The thing, whatever it was, hadn't moved again. I still hadn't looked. I didn't need to. I could feel it. Like cold air was pooling behind me, pressing down on the back of my neck. I reached over, grabbed the flashlight from the glove box, and slowly unbuckled my seatbelt. And that's when it spoke again. Not over the radio. Not whispered. It was right behind my ear. They never found him, Travis. My heart just about stopped. The voice had changed. It wasn't low and raspy anymore. It was broken, tired, grieving. No one came looking. I turned around. I shouldn't have, but I did, and the bunk was empty. Nothing. There but my old winter blanket, a pair of boots, and a crumpled-up delivery receipt. But I could still feel it, the heaviness. Like the air itself had memory. Like the walls of the sleeper were holding on to something too awful to leave. I jumped out of the truck, didn't even shut the door, just ran down the dirt trail a few yards into the woods, bent over and dry heaving. The cold hit me hard, full of pine and rot and something else, something sweet like decaying flowers. That's when I heard the static, not from the truck, from deeper in the woods, like a CB trying to lock onto a channel. I followed it, not far, maybe 40, 50 feet, and I found it. There was a rig, half buried in leaves and pine needles, rusted out and slumped into a ravine. The trees had grown around it, not over decades, but long enough. Windshield shattered. Cab door half hinged open, and inside, slumped across the dash, was a body, or what was left of one, mostly bones now, clothes torn, flannel shirt still hanging from the frame. A faded photo of a kid tucked into the visor. A rusted CB mic hanging from the ceiling. I stood there for a long time, long enough to realize what I was looking at. It was Lenny Crawford's truck, the one that had disappeared back in '99, and the CB, it was still powered, still faintly hissing, like it never stopped transmitting, like it had been waiting. I backed away, fast, nearly slipped in the mud getting back to my truck. When I climbed in, Juno jumped back into the passenger seat like she Couldn't wait to leave that place behind. I cranked the ignition. The engine turned. Once, twice, then stalled. Again. The lights flickered. Dashboard went black. The entire rig died. And in the silence, the CB, still unplugged, came back on. You found me. I stared at it. My hands were trembling. Now, finish the climb. Take me home. Somehow the engine turned over after that. I don't remember driving the last few miles. I barely remember dropping the load. All I know is that by the time I hit pavement again, the CB was silent. My phone finally got service. The fog lifted, and whatever was in the cab was gone. I checked the sleeper again that night. Nothing. No fingerprints. No breath on the glass. Just a silence so deep it rang in my ears. But I kept the photo from Lenny's cab. It's in my glove box now. I don't know why. Maybe I felt like someone should carry it. That was a year ago. I've passed through Widow's Peak maybe twice since. Always, in daylight, always with the CB off. But last week I forgot. I hit scan out of habit, just cruising through Tennessee, halfway between Johnson City and Asheville, and through the noise, the faintest whisper. You shouldn't be out here. There's this stretch of Route 602 cutting through the backwoods of southwestern Virginia, not far from where the Appalachians start to fold into West Virginia. You won't find it on any scenic drive brochures. Just a lonely two-lane with no lights, no guardrails, and enough potholes to keep your jaw clenched the whole ride. I've driven that road maybe 100 times over the years, hauling scrap or running weekend deliveries for my uncle's shop out of Pulaski. It's always been quiet, maybe too quiet. The kind of road where your tires hum a little louder and your thoughts get away from you. This happened in the fall of 2021, around early November. You know that time of year where everything starts, dying at once. The leaves had dropped hard that week and the wind had that brittle edge to it. Not winter yet, but definitely not warm. I was headed northbound around 9 p.m., returning from a late delivery run down to Richlands. No moon that night, just cloud cover and the occasional blur of fog rolling low across the fields. No music, no CB chatter, just the hum of the tires and the red glow of my dash. About 20 miles into the drive, I spotted a pair of taillights up ahead, maybe a quarter-mile out. They looked older, smaller than modern LEDs, that deep red hue like something from the 90s. I figured it was a car headed the same direction, maybe another local. At first, I didn't think anything of it. But what caught my eye was the way they moved. They didn't bounce like normal car lights. You know how headlights and taillights dip slightly on hills or curve gently around bends? These didn't. They stayed level, too level, like the car was floating smooth above the road. Still, I brushed it off. Thought maybe it was just a well-aligned sedan, something small like a Corolla. I kept pace with it for a few miles, matching speed without getting too close. Every time I dipped around a curve, I expected to close the gap, maybe get a better look. But I never did. Those lights always stayed just far enough ahead, just out of reach. Then something strange happened. The road straightened out for a long stretch. 10 miles at least. I know this part well because it's the only place on 602 where you can actually breathe easy without clutching the wheel. When I hit that straightaway, I expected to finally catch up, but the lights were gone. Vanished. No sign of brake lights, no sign of a turnoff. Just my headlights washing over bare blacktop and empty darkness ahead. I slowed to a crawl, squinting, checking the ditches for any glint of reflection. Nothing. I pulled over onto the shoulder and killed my lights for a second just to see if maybe I'd missed something in the glare. Darkness and silence, until I looked down and saw the tire tracks. They weren't there a second ago. But now, clear as day in the soft shoulder mud, was a set of fresh tire prints veering off the pavement and into the woods to the right. No driveway, no break in the trees, just tracks, wide, clean, too deliberate, like someone drove straight into the forest. I got out. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe something deeper, like a magnet pulling me forward. I should have stayed in the truck. The air was dead still. No crickets, no breeze, just that weird pressure you feel before a thunderstorm, except there wasn't a cloud burst in sight. I followed the tracks for about 20 yards. They led straight, through the trees. No overgrown brush, no snapped limbs. Just a narrow path like something had carved it out years ago and kept it secret. My boots sunk a little in the soft dirt. I could smell moss, damp leaves, and that cold rot that clings to Appalachian soil in fall. Every now and then I'd hear a pop in the distance, like old wood cracking under its own weight. The deeper I went, the more I realized something was off about the tracks. They didn't weave or bend. They were perfectly straight. Too perfect. I stopped walking when I noticed the trees around me. They weren't just random forest growth. They were lined up, evenly spaced, and all of them dead. Not a single leaf, not one bit of undergrowth. Just trunks like vertical tombstones stretching on in both directions like some forgotten grid. That's when I heard the engine. Faint. Idle. Like it was just around the bend ahead, except there was no bend. And I hadn't heard it until just then. I turned back toward the road, but it was gone. I mean, completely gone. No break in the trees, no shoulder, just more trunks, more silence. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand, trying to find the path I came down. That's when I saw the car. It was maybe 30 feet away. Older model, late 80s, square body, silver or gray, hard to tell in the dark. Its taillights were still on, glowing that same soft red like dying embers. The trunk was partially open, and the driver's side door was wide open. The engine was running, low, smooth. I could hear the fan tick-tick-ticking with that familiar rattle of age, but I couldn't see anyone inside. "Hey," I called out, loud and flat. "Nothing. Y'all okay in there?" Still nothing. I stepped closer. Gravel crunched beneath my boots, but everything else stayed dead quiet. No wind, no rustling, no crickets. Just that soft idle and the red light staring at me. The interior was dark. Couldn't make out the dashboard or seat, just shapes. Then just as I took another step, the engine cut off. Clean. Sharp. Like someone had turned the key with deliberate calm. That's when I heard the snap. Behind me. I turned fast. Flashlight. Beam caught movement. Not a person, not an animal, but a flicker. Like light bending. It was gone before I could focus. My skin crawled. I backed up toward the car, thinking maybe someone was hurt or hiding. I looked into the open driver's side. Empty. Seat was pushed far back. Dust covered the dash. The keys were still in the ignition. I reached inside and killed the lights, trying not to touch anything more than I had to. The taillights died with a flicker, leaving me in near total darkness save for the flashlight. I turned to head back and realized I didn't know which way I'd come from anymore. The path was gone. Trees looked the same in every direction. Even, the ground was undisturbed, like the tire tracks had vanished behind me. And that's when I noticed something else. There were more cars, half hidden behind trees, covered in moss, some buried in brush. All of them facing the same direction, inward, toward a center I hadn't reached yet. And they were all older, all with doors ajar, trunks popped like they'd been opened in a hurry and never shut, like everyone who drove them in had gotten out. But no one ever got back in. My breath was coming fast now. I was trying to stay calm, trying to think, but my brain had gone slippery. Then I saw the figure, about 20 feet to my left, standing between two dead trees, too still, too tall. I froze. The flashlight flickered once, then died. No clicks, no warning, just gone. I tapped it, smacked it. Nothing. My eyes struggled in the dark. I couldn't see the figure anymore. But I knew. It hadn't left. I could hear something. Not footsteps, but the absence of sound shifting closer. The kind of quiet that follows a predator. The kind that watches. And then I heard a voice. Low, familiar. Right behind me. You followed them. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body locked up like it knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. That voice, it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a fact, like something that already knew how this ended. You followed them. 3 words, said low but not whispered, not angry, just final. I could feel the presence behind me. It wasn't warm like a person. It was cold, not freezing, just absent of heat. Like standing next to a running freezer with the door open. I wanted to run. Every part of me screamed it, but I knew, deep in my gut, that if I ran I wouldn't get far. So I spoke. Who are you? No answer. The woods held their breath. I turned slowly. There was no one there. Just trees, just dark, just that silver car sitting with its door open, now looking older, more brittle, like it had been rusting there for decades instead of minutes. Backed away, and that's when I noticed something strange about the ground, the dirt beneath my boots. It wasn't wet anymore. It was dry, brittle, cracked in spots like desert earth. The trees looked different too, not just dead, but wrong. Their bark had gone pale, bone white in the dark. No moss, no bugs, no signs of life. It was like I had stepped out of time. Like the moment I followed those taillights off the road, I'd crossed into something that wasn't part of here anymore, started moving again. Slowly. Flashlight still dead, breathing shallow, trying not to make a sound. I figured if I could get back to the truck, maybe I could follow the old tire tracks out, or at least get to a road and flag someone down. But the more I walked, the more the cars multiplied. Hundreds of them, half visible in the dark. Some stacked, some overgrown, others melted into the ground like they'd sunken there. All of them angled, toward some invisible center, like whatever brought them here never let them leave. I walked faster. Then something moved ahead of me. At first I thought it was fog, but then it formed into a shape. Faint and gray, like a smear on glass. A person. No face, no features, just the silhouette of a man, tall, unmoving, blocking my path. I stopped dead in my tracks. "Let me go," I said. The figure tilted its head, almost curious. Then without warning, it split, like smoke being pulled in 2 directions, and behind it, in the middle of a hollow, was a clearing. And in that clearing's a tower. At least that's what it looked like, made of metal, rusted, maybe 30 feet tall. Thin, with skeletal beams, like the old radio towers they used to bolt to the tops of government buildings back in the 60s. But this one was humming. Not with electricity, with voices. Dozens of them. Whispers layered over each other. Some crying, some begging, others mumbling nonsense, names, numbers, directions. One voice stood out, my own. "Help me. I don't know where I am." I froze. That was my voice. I'd never said it out loud, not yet, but it was me. The exact tone, the exact panic I hadn't given voice to. I staggered backward, and then the lights came on. Not headlights, not flashlights. Taillights, all around me, every single car blinked on. That same dull red glow I'd followed off the road. They lit up in perfect sync, humming low like an engine turning over. And I realized something. They were alive. Not the cars, the taillights, or whatever had made them. They weren't leading anyone home. They were lures, like anglerfish, and I was caught in the current. I ran. I don't remember choosing a direction, just that I was moving, branches slapping me in the face, hands tearing against bark. I didn't care if I fell, I just needed a way. The woods blurred past me. The red light pulsed behind, chasing, blinking in patterns I couldn't make sense of. Names whispered as I ran. Some I knew, most I didn't. Blake. Jonah. Darla. Don't look back. That last one hit different, because it wasn't a warning. It was a threat. I broke through the tree line like a swimmer surfacing from deep water, fell to my knees on gravel. I'd found the road, or maybe it let me out. My truck was still there, Driver's side door open, dome light on. Juno was sitting in the passenger seat, ears pinned, tail between her legs. When she saw me, she let out this soft, broken bark. Not out of joy, but relief. I climbed in, slammed the door, locked it. Didn't even try to start the engine. Just sat there shaking, staring at the tree line. And for a while, nothing happened. No lights, no sounds, just dark woods and cold air. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to start the truck. The engine caught on the first try. I turned the wheel back toward the highway. Didn't look back once. I've driven that road maybe twice since. Daylight only. Never alone. I tried to report the clearing once, told a ranger out of Bland County that I thought someone was dumping cars out past Route 602. He looked at me like I was nuts. "There's no access back there," he said. "Just old mine land and floodplain. Too steep, no roads. But here's the part that won't leave me. Every now and then, when I'm driving at night, I'll see taillights ahead of me. I used to speed up to catch them. Now, I hit the brakes. I let them go. Because I know now, those lights aren't leading anyone home. They're looking for the next driver.